interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
Hello, humans. It's Rob with Not a Robot Podcast here with a special episode of our Pride podcast. Today we have a special guest with us, writer Chris Fildes, author of Fanny Galactic, Tuck to the Future, and the soon-to-be-released Crime and Disorder, along with many more. And he is here today to discuss with us all about his new book, as well as Fanny Galactic and the comics industry in general. Now, before we get started, if you've got something to say to us, send an email to notarobotcomics@gmail.com. And you can get us on Twitter, too, @notarobotcomics. And if you want your mail read on the show, just let us know. We've got a great group of humans, many of whom identify as a member of the LGBTQ+ community, and we are from all over the Not a Robot Podcast network. My name is Rob, he, him, and I identify as bisexual, and you can find me on Twitter @Rob_2814. With me today we have Holly.
Hello.
And Caitlin.
Hiya.
Now, Chris, would you mind telling us a bit about yourself and where you came from?
Yeah, certainly. Thanks for having me on the show. My name is Chris. I'm a writer from Dublin in Ireland. I'm originally from the UK, but I moved over to Dublin quite some time ago. My first book that I've released was Fanny Galactic, Tuck to the Future. And that came out on Kickstarter last year, and just recently released the follow-up book on Kickstarter, which also funded. And I'm getting ready to get that printed at the moment and then officially launch it at Thought Bubble, the convention in the UK next month.
Very nice. Yeah, it's exciting that you have a follow-up book coming out. We've seen a bit of it, and it looks awesome. All of us here are big fans of the first Fanny Galactic. It was really well written, I find. The art was really nice, and super excited to check out the follow-up.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. So, yeah.
Sorry. So my first question for you is, what brought you into comics?
What brought me into comics? Well, I've been reading comics since I was really, really young. Now, I'll be honest with you, it's tended to be kind of the British comics like 2000 AD and things like that, although I dabbled in things like Batman and stuff in the 90s and Y the Last Man and Preacher and a few things like that. But typically I've been reading like 2000 AD since I was a kid, and I've always wanted to do something like that. I came up with an idea a few years ago of having my own kind of LGBTQ+ version of 2000 AD that I was going to do, and I had this idea for the Fanny Galactic story, and that's really what I was originally planning to do. Just had this very ambitious idea of kind of hiring a few other people to work on some stories, and then as I started working on it, I kind of figured this is actually going to cost me a fortune. I think I'll just concentrate on getting Fanny Galactic done and see where that takes me.
Fair enough, yeah. Now, that being said, where did the idea for Fanny Galactic come from?
Well,
there was any real world experiences.
Yeah, it's a funny story. I was in a local gay bar a couple of years ago, a good few years ago actually, because the story idea I came up with quite some time ago, and I was watching a drag act, and it was a drag act that I'd seen many times. I was kind of not really into it that day. I think because I just happened to be in the pub with some friends, and as kind of my mind was wandering, and I just noticed that the drag queen had a wind machine that I noticed it seen better days. And my mind started wondering what would happen if that wind machine blew up, and I just kind of thought, if the wind machine blew up, what would happen? And I just the idea of this drag queen being transported to the future, like Buck Rogers in the 21st Century, came into my head. And then as I started thinking about that, I started thinking, well, who would have, would that have been an accident or would that have been sabotage? And then, well, I thought, well, of course it was sabotage. It would have been another drag queen that had done that. A jealous drag queen. And then the idea just spiraled. It really just came to me very, very quickly. The idea of the drag queen going into the future came to me really quickly. I had no idea what was going to happen when they went to the future at all. That came to me later. But the original idea was there for some time. And I just started writing it and it just flowed. So
that's pretty awesome. That's such a real world connection. I honestly did not expect that. And even with the fan and everything, that's awesome.
Do you find often as a writer that your mind tends to wander in unexpected places like that?
Yes, very much so. Every idea that I come up with, I mean, I've only written, these two are the only books I've written and I've published, but whenever I'm writing any other stories, it's exactly like that. They just come to me and it's some silly idea and it just spirals. I think the way I look at it is I think the idea is always there in your head, and something sparks it. Basically, something sparks the idea, and the story was always there, I think. And it's just you get something that helps you to kind of start to uncover it and to pull it out. It's weird. Once I started writing it, even the future bit, it just, once I started getting it on paper, it just flowed out of my head. It was like it was there all along. It just needed something to get it out.
Push it out.
Yeah.
It seemed very character driven. All of your characters seem to be so personal. It's like everybody has a friend that's like, Fanny Galactic in one form or another. But then there are these little nuances that make it seem so personal too. Cool. Did you base any of these characters off of people in your life loosely or anything, or just personalities?
Not really. I mean, no, I didn't really. It's just, I think there's a bit of me in the new book in the character Violet, actually. There's a little bit of me in that, definitely. Okay. As I was writing that, I went into some kind of, there's a few things in that book that are quite personal to me. Some of the things that character says, you wouldn't have got to that bit in the clip, or in the bit that I've given you. Mm-hmm. Generally, I've been around drag queens for quite some time. When I moved to Dublin, I got involved in this competition called Alternative Miss Ireland. It was a thing where it was like a beauty pageant that anyone could enter. So it kind of attracted a lot of drag queens and drag kings and various other people. And I basically started, I was working with someone as a volunteer in this thing called the Irish Queer Archives, which is just where a load of material about gay and queer life in Ireland was put. This was like 20 years ago. Yeah. And I just got really interested when I started seeing about this Alternative Miss Ireland, and I volunteered for it. And he ended up building the website for them. So I wasn't involved in the actual day-to-day running of it. But I became exposed to so many drag acts and various different people that I think some of those have probably made it into the book subconsciously. But as I say, none of them are directly based on anyone. The characters just came out of my head. It's really weird. Fanny came out of my head straight away. She was just a kind of, I'd seen these drag queens when I was kind of growing up, or when I've been to drag bars in Britain, in places like Brighton and kind of small seaside towns. And they were all very much kind of saucy, kind of, I don't know, kind of slightly naughty, slightly crude, drag queens, and I kind of based her on one of those. And really, her and Sybil, or the One, were the only ones that were really fully formed. I knew that Sybil was going to be this arch drag queen, and she's more based on characters from Dallas and Dynasty and soap operas, to be honest. She's much more like one of those, and she's based herself on those characters. That's why she's supposed to be like those. And so I definitely think that Sybil has come from soap operas, American soap operas, and Fanny has come from drag queens that I've seen growing up. The others just kind of just evolved as I wrote them. Actually, Violet and Sally, they weren't supposed to have much of a part in the story. Their part grew. There were Sybil in the future. She had two other kind of hench people. One, basically, Sally was a completely different character in the future. But as I was writing it, I just realized, it's obviously supposed to be her in that room. It's supposed to be Sally. It never was when I was first writing it. So two characters got cut from it and replaced with Sally and Violet. You probably might not have noticed Violet, the other one of the characters that was with Fanny in the pub in the first part of the story. She's in the book all the way through, but she's in the background. And when you read the new book, you'll see how she becomes the way she is in the first book. So.
Okay. Well, I gotta go back and check that. I don't think I noticed Violet.
I think when you read the full version of the second one and then go back and read the first, it's going to answer quite a few kind of questions about various bits and pieces without giving too much away.
Yeah. So when we had discussed Fanny Galactic earlier, I think all of us were intrigued by Sally, certainly, and her tattoos, and wanted to know more about her. So the little bit that we have to look at of Crime and Disorder, and I'm looking forward to the whole thing. I think all of us have backed it on Kickstarter, so we've got copies coming our way. Really appreciate that. But yeah, to see this, it looks like some of the questions that we had after reading the first book are going to be answered in this one.
I
which
think
is
so.
exciting.
Yeah, I think so. Now, I have to be honest. There's not a huge amount of Sally in the new one, so she is in it. So I decided she was a little in it, a little bit more, and then after listening to feedback, after listening to various people talking about the book, I decided that I want to give her more space. I want to, in the same way that this story is more about Violet and Sybil, I want to give Sally her own story. In the sequel, 20,000 Weeks Under the Sea, she's in it a lot more. She's a much bigger character in that. So I'm really looking forward to that. But the new one, it starts to explain a little bit about, when you read it, you'll probably work out how she becomes like she is. But it's kind of, I decided to spread it out and kind of, introduce a little bit more about their characters bit by bit.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's fine by us. More comic books to read.
Yeah. I'm so excited about this. I started writing a short spin-off because what I'm planning on doing is I wanted there to be 3 or 4 main Fanny Galactic books. So there's Tuck to the Future, then there was going to be 20,000 Weeks Under the Sea, which is the sequel, and then there was going to be a kind of final main one, which is going to be kind of set in another time period. I won't spoil it now. But as I started writing those, I kind of figured I wouldn't mind writing some shorter stories in between them. So that's how Crime and Disorder came to be. I wanted to kind of fill in some of the blanks and take out some of this stuff was supposed to go into 20,000 Weeks Under the Sea, and I just felt, it deserves a story of its own. And I want to do the same thing with Sally. After 20,000 Weeks Under the Sea, there'll be a Sally story that explores her, and it's really, I'm laughing when I'm writing it. I'm really pleased with it. It's really silly. It's really, really silly, and it's really good fun, and she just causes absolute mayhem. So I'm really looking forward to that one.
Good.
We are too, yeah.
Now, for fans of Tuck to the Future, I know Crime and Disorder is not officially completely out yet, but is there any timeline you could give us on 20,000 Weeks Under the Sea?
20,000 Weeks Under the Sea, I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I was going to jump straight into it and start writing it, and I just felt I needed a little bit of a break because I started writing. Like when I started writing Crime and Disorder, it was part of 20,000 Weeks Under the Sea. It was and as I started writing 20,000 Weeks Under the Sea, that's when I realized, this is a separate story, and I cut it out and and fleshed it out. And then I kind of thought, maybe I just need a little bit of a break just to kind of gather my thoughts. And I'm taking both books to Thought Bubble, the convention in Leeds next month. And I kind of wouldn't mind just getting a bit of feedback from people and seeing what people like and what they don't like. I don't want it to lead where the story's going too much, but it would just be, nice just to get a bit of feedback before I launch into the next one. I'm also not sure if I'm going to do the next one as a book or whether I'm going to do it as maybe two shorter ones and release it like that. It's all a bit up in the air at the moment. But I have the plot. The plot is written and big chunks of it are written. But it's just sitting down and writing it and doing it. It's ambitious. It's longer than both. It's longer than Tuck to the Future. So it's kind of budget as well. Finding the budget.
Fair enough. You mentioned a lot about conventions. I'm just curious myself. What's your convention scene like? Is it mostly local stuff, or I know COVID still interrupts a lot of flights, but how's your international scene?
I don't know, to be honest. I've never really been to any. Because I'm so new to doing this. Dublin has something called. They do something in Dublin, but it hasn't been running for the last 2 years because of COVID, and I haven't been to it. There's smaller conventions that run here. There's a thing called Octocon that runs in October, which is a sci-fi convention. And there's a big comics representation in that. That's really it for Ireland, as far as I'm aware. In the UK, there's a few bits and pieces. As I say, I'm so new to it, and I had never intended to go to conventions. I felt quite uncomfortable doing that. I felt uncomfortable doing podcasts or any publicity or anything around it. It's only once I started getting into it, I started enjoying it. So, as I say, it's all new to me. I'm not completely sure, but I want to start going to them and finding out more. Thought Bubble's huge. It's the biggest one in the country, and it takes place in November, and there'll be all kinds of people at that one. It's going to be massive. I'm really looking forward to that kind of. So
yeah, it can be a new experience. Can be a little daunting.
Yeah, I did a small one there's someone tried to start this new one in Bristol in the UK, and it's like a LGBTQ plus comic arts festival. It was really good. It's quite small, but it's the first time they tried to do it, and I have this feeling it's going to grow and grow and grow every year. So that was my first experience, and it was a nice introduction to it because there wasn't too many people at it, and I got to kind of meet meet a few people. I got to meet the artist of the book and the designer of Fanny Galactic, as we know, the book, which is the first time I've actually met them in person.
Okay.
This is really exciting. So it's all been done online and telephone conversations and WhatsApp and stuff like that. So.
That's pretty awesome. I've been behind a booth at some conventions. I can agree with you. Smaller conventions are the best way to start.
Yeah, I think so. I am a little bit nervous about doing a big one. I don't really, it's the thought of sitting on a table for 2 days and talking to people. It's a lot, and I am a little bit nervous about doing that. But I think, and I'm sharing a table with someone I've never met as well, so it's all quite nerve-wracking. I'll give it a try and see if I, and see. I think it's worthwhile doing it. It's just nerve-wracking. So
yeah. Now, aside from comics, something I'm curious about, what does LGBTQ plus mean to you?
What does it mean to me? Oh, that's an interesting question. I mean, it's part of my identity. It's a big part of my identity. A lot of stuff, to me, I don't know how to answer that. I don't know how to answer it. Could you narrow it down a bit?
Hey, does it have a specific meaning to you? Are you a member of the community, or
yes, I am. Yeah. I'm a gay man, basically. So yeah. So I've been involved in various things in the community for years. As I say, there was the Alternative Asylum that I was involved in. I ran a queer website for Dublin called Queer ID. It was a social network, and this was between 2003 and 2013. So we had thousands of people using it every day. There's been marriages that came from it because people met on it. We ran kind of groups and events, and kind of launched a company off the back of it, designing websites, and we ended up doing loads of websites for the LGBTQ plus community. We did most of the websites for all the community groups, bars and clubs in Dublin at one point. So it's something that's a really, really important part of my life. Is not just the fact that I'm part of the community, but it's also I like to kind of be involved in the community as well.
Yeah, building that community for so many that usually statistically don't have it. I mean, there needs to be. It's those seeds that you planted, that have made such a difference over the last. I'm sure that you've seen a huge difference over the last 20 years.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah,
it's been a massive difference over the last 20 years. It's like there's some worrying signs at the moment over here.
Yeah.
There's some worrying signs. There's this group that's formed called the LGB Alliance, they're called. They are just awful. They are not a real LGBTQ group. I mean, they quite deliberately left the T out of the LGB.
I see.
It's horrible. And they've done that deliberately because they feel that there's no place for transgender people in our community, and I just think it's awful. It's like, to me, I don't understand where they're coming from, because without the T, we wouldn't have the community. It's like, Stonewall, and the fact that transgender people have been involved in the queer rights movement from the beginning, and it's just awful that some group should come along and say we don't want you. It's so horrible. And the worst thing is they're kind of getting government funding in the UK as well, and they're getting a lot of unquestionable coverage, as if they're being brought onto TV programs as if they are the voice of the LGBTQ plus community almost, and being taken credibly as something. But to me, they're just to me and many others, they're a hate group. They're, if you're saying that there's no place for transgender people in our community, then to me that's pretty transphobic, and it should be said out loud. I think myself, and I'm hearing more and more people as they're talking on programs now. I don't know if you heard Russell T Davis, who did the It's a Sin TV program about HIV/AIDS in the 80s. And Doctor Who and various other things. He did an acceptance speech the other day, and he spoke about this a lot more eloquently than I ever could. But it's worrying, actually, because they're also trying to discredit, this group are trying to discredit Stonewall, who are the big LGBTQ rights group that's been around for years and years, and they're starting to try to discredit them, and they're getting away with it to a certain extent. People are listening to them, and that kind of thing worries me, and it's something that I go back to in Crime and Disorder. Coincidentally, I mean, I wrote this before all of this was happening, but there's a big sub-thread in Crime and Disorder that these people that were around, these politicians that were around in the 80s, the ones that brought in the horrible rules, like this thing called Section 28, which we had, which meant that you couldn't promote homosexuality in schools. It meant you couldn't talk about being gay in schools. All these people that were around that said horrible things in the 80s about AIDS and HIV and stuff, they're all still around, but they might not be MPs in Parliament, but they might be in local government, or they might be in writing columns in newspapers, and they're just itching to roll things back. And so there's a big subthread in there about these people are still around, and we need to point out. Of course, I kind of maybe the characters in the book don't deal with it in the correct way, but it's definitely a thread there that I want to put into the books. So
no, that's sorry, go ahead. That's perfect. I'm looking forward to reading the rest of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a shame. I haven't heard about the LGB movement. What's it called? It's just a
LGBT Alliance, they're called. It's worth looking them up, because I think this is something that we're going to start seeing all over the place. There's going to be a pushback. We've come so far in the last few years, and I think we almost take it for granted that there were a lot of people that were anti all these rights that we've been given, and they're still around. They're still around, and they haven't, even though they haven't given up. If they get an opportunity to roll these things back, they will. And I think that's kind of the message that I want to kind of put out in the book, to a certain extent.
Yeah. That whole idea is just a complete opposite of what I think the entire community represents.
It's divide and conquer. It's a classic divide and conquer move. It's like you take the T out, and a lot of people, it's people outside of our community that they're winning the minds of, because they're presenting things in certain ways. A lot of people outside of our community don't really understand trans issues. So you get this organization that comes along and says, hey, you know what, LGBT people didn't want the trans people in the first place, is the kind of thing they're saying. It's like, why are they involved in all of this? It's got nothing to do with being gay, or any, they're presenting all these arguments to people that are just confusing, and they're trying to muddy the waters. And if they what will be next? The LG Alliance. That'll be the next thing, and then the G Alliance. They just want to divide and conquer, basically. So I think it's disgusting. Something I'm really, really passionate and annoyed about. So
it's very understandable. I'm getting passionate and annoyed about it as we talk now.
Yes, definitely.
I mean, we're unfortunately seeing some of that in the U.S. too right now. There's a big to-do about over at Netflix. Basically, Netflix aired a special from the comedian Dave Chappelle, who said some things during the course of it. Like he said, "I'm Team TERF," which stands for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist. Basically, some transphobic stuff, which is not new from him, but it was pretty blunt in this. And there's been some backlash. And Netflix, rather than, they certainly don't want to take it down. They've broken with one of the executive producers of one of their other successful shows, has broken ties with Netflix over it. And instead they tried to hold up. They were like, no, we're obviously fine with LGBTQ people. We air Hannah Gadsby's special as well.
Okay.
And of course, Hannah Gadsby then got on Twitter and said, go fuck yourself. This is not.
Yeah.
So one thing, have you watched the stand-up yet?
Which?
No.
The Dave Chappelle stand-up.
I haven't. No.
Okay. So if you haven't watched it, I would recommend watching it.
Right.
Simply because he takes a long walk. I mean, it's an hour and a half stand-up special. He takes a long walk of getting people pretty riled up. However, in the last 7 minutes, he closes it out, and it's not the trash hate garbage that it's being touted as. It truly it's getting people talking. And I recommend, if you haven't seen it, just go watch it.
Okay. I mean, what I have seen is that the conversation about it has opened the door for some other people to say and mean some really hateful things.
Oh,
yeah, that's the thing.
Very true, very true. But again, please, before you crucify this man, just go watch his stand-up.
Okay. I think that's a good point, actually, because sometimes there's stuff where people haven't watched things and maybe someone is saying something, and maybe later on, I don't know, maybe he rolls back on it, or maybe he uses it. Maybe he's having a go at transphobic people in the end. I don't know.
I mean, just go watch it and form your own opinions. But that really does bring us to the point of, I'm still glad it was brought up, just because it brings us to the point of like how important media and art and expression and just talking about these subjects like can be a huge, it obviously affects so many people. So the way you talk about it, it shouldn't be laced with all that garbage. And if it is, I mean, I don't know, like just more exposure, more talking, talk. Sorry. I just think Netflix is such a wide thing that like people down here in the South that like we got "Don't Tread on Me" and rebel flags everywhere and Trump signs. I mean, like, it is worrisome that maybe they would just hear the negative connotations out of that without staying and without thinking. But are you ever going to reach those people? Like,
it depends. I think, is it how the media are reporting things?
Right.
As well, are they reporting things to stir up the bad feeling as well? I think there's a lot of that. We get a lot of that with this LGBT alliance as well. It's like, it's like pitting people against each other. When the media are reporting things, it's almost like trying to whip up these kind of horrible feelings and resentment and stuff like that. And I think the media play a huge part in this, definitely. So.
Yeah, when you give that hate a voice, it's only going to get bigger.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, we need to talk about these things as well. I wouldn't want people to shut down debate and conversation. I mean, we had a huge thing in Ireland a few years ago when we had the marriage referendum, with the gay marriage referendum in the country. We had a referendum to decide, whether have same-sex marriage, and actually there were some pretty awful voices in that. But then there were people saying that these people shouldn't be allowed on television to debate and stuff, and had mixed feelings about it, because a lot of them, they come out with some of this horrible stuff, and they sent people towards people that before wouldn't have even thought about supporting same-sex marriage. They converted more people to vote yes in that referendum than they did to vote no. So I think it's important to shine a light on those and debate them. As long as you can debate people and show that their opinions are completely wrong, you're better off having people on television to debate them than to just report on it and let people complain about it on Twitter and talk about it on Twitter, because at least you have the opportunity of changing other people's minds and showing them up for what they are. And most of these people, they come on with these arguments, which usually save the children, what's going to happen to the children kind of argument. But actually, when you start talking to them and debating them, you show them up so quickly, as long as you stay calm and don't get too emotional. And we had problems here where people were just getting too emotional about the topic, and then thus letting the bigots win the argument. So.
Yeah, I think that's my problem. I get so emotional, and then like words are just lost.
Yeah,
it's hard. It's really hard to go up against bigotry. It's really, really difficult, because they know what they're doing. They're trolls a lot of the time, and they know what buttons to press to get you flustered and to kind of win arguments. Not win arguments, but not let you get your point across. The whole point is them trying to not let you get your good points across. And muddying the waters, because they know they don't really have arguments. They don't really have valid arguments. It's just hate, really. So.
I know we've covered a pretty big topic, I think, just now. So, well, we'll get into a bit of a smaller topic, just on comics again. Do any other creators in the industry give you any inspiration?
Yeah, I would say definitely growing up and reading the kind of the people that were writing stuff in 2000 AD when I was growing up. It's kind of like a slightly anarchic, anti-authority to a certain extent kind of thing that you would get in 2000 AD, and just that kind of silliness coupled with seriousness as well. It's something that I'm trying to do in my books is have quite a lot of kind of madcap silly stuff, but like a nice serious message underneath. Sometimes it's overt and sometimes it's more kind of subtle, I hope. That's what I'm aiming for. But as I say, I'm so new, it's a learning experience. So people like John Wagner, who would be the writer of, co-creator of Judge Dredd, and Pat Mills, who would have been the original the original editor of 2000 AD, people like that. A lot of the people that you'd probably see in American comics that would be from the UK tend to be people that have come from 2000 AD, and I think I tend to gravitate to a lot of that. Sometimes it's not even deliberate. I'll pick something up and then I'll be, oh, that person wrote 2000 AD years ago. But that seems to be the kind of stuff that inspires me. So.
A big question in the comic world, I think, for everyone. Are you a fan of Grant Morrison?
I have mixed feelings, because I had read Zenith, which they wrote in the 80s, and it was part of 2000 AD. It was really good. It was one of the best things that 2000 AD ever published. And then I didn't read much other Grant Morrison stuff since then, to be honest, but I did try to read some of the Batman stuff that they did a few years ago, and I found it incomprehensible, and I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I think it was the death of Batman, or the death of Bruce Wayne, or something, and I just couldn't. I really didn't like it at all.
It was very confusing.
Find a jumping on point. I've been trying to find a jumping on point for Batman again, because I read it in the 90s and I haven't read it since. I'm always trying to find a jumping on point every so often, and I just always have found it quite difficult to get into. and reading Grant stuff, it didn't help.
Yeah, I can 100% agree with you. That was my jumping on point for that era of Batman as well, and I was completely lost.
I guess if I'd understood more of it and I'd read it, I think it's important to have jumping on points for people. Really, really important. And a lot of the runs that I see of things don't seem to have proper jumping on points. And I actually I started reading Batman from the New 52 about 2 weeks ago. So it's beginning of Scott Snyder's run and the Court of Owls. It's the first time I've read Batman in years, properly. And I love it. I think it's brilliant. It's a fantastic jumping on point. Doesn't assume too much backstory, and introduces kind of the cast and the new Bat family quite well and slowly. And I'm really enjoying it. So,
and in the DC Comics fandom, that is arguably the pinnacle of Batman comics.
Okay.
And has been for years. That is a great jumping on point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, in terms of weekly comics, what's on your pull list, if any?
Not a lot. To be honest, I don't read a huge amount of comics. I tend to find something I like and then follow it. 2000 AD is a must. I've read that since I was 5, so that's quite a long time. Many, many years. I read that every week. I love the anthology format of it, and I love the fact that every few weeks it's new stories and stuff. I feel like I get my comics hit from 2000 AD and its spin-off, Judge Dredd magazine. So I'm not really reading anything else at the moment. I tend to dip back into things. So there's very little I'm reading at the moment, to be honest. I'm going to start getting Batman 89 and Superman 78. They look really interesting, so they are definitely on my list of things to read. The House on the Lake is something that I'm planning on picking up very soon. There's something, what's it called? Something Taking Our Children, or
yes,
really interesting.
Something Killing Our Children, I think it's called.
Yeah. So as I say, I'm not reading very much at the moment, but I'm planning on kind of reading a lot more very soon.
All fantastic books, I must say. You're gonna have a great time with those. Now, from your own writer's opinion, what do you think we can learn from the Fanny Galactic series?
What can you learn? Well, I think a good bit about kind of rights movement. I think there's a lot in there, and also not just about kind of LGBT rights, but the difference of opinions in LGBT rights as well. It's something that comes up in Crime and Disorder, to do with not everyone's on the same page with them, and not everyone has the same opinion about how things have gone, and that's something I want to send across. There's also the stuff about kind of I'm trying to cover stuff to do with kind of slightly older characters as well at the moment, and kind of the experiences that they've had, because I think that's something that can be forgotten sometimes. A lot of the stuff you see in media now is younger people, which is great. There's much better representation across all media at the moment. It's so fantastic to see. But I want to kind of look at some of the people that maybe didn't have that when they were growing up and how that has affected them. So there's a big thread in Fanny Galactic about people that grew up in the 80s and what growing up in a homophobic state, or like Britain for me would have been a homophobic state with all its anti-LGBTQ plus rules. But it's not just about growing up then, it's also about how stuff affects people to this day. So, we all have our hang-ups about things that have happened and things that have affected us. And, this kind of stuff that affects you when you're a kid stays with you all your life. And it's that kind of stuff I want to cover. But I also just want it to be fun as well. It's that mix of, I want people to read it and go, oh my God, that was, they really enjoyed reading it, but I want them to get some kind of message from it as well.
Mm-hmm. I think that was something that really came across in the first book. We talked about our history as a community is really sad sometimes. But to be able to cover that and to talk about it and still leave the experience, just having a blast,
Thanks.
Reading about these time traveling, world conquering drag queens.
Yeah, it was something I wish I had put more of in the first book. In the original draft of it, there's a scene where like Fanny Galactic and Sybil kind of confront each other, and it's revealed that that they've obviously had some falling out with somebody from years ago that succumbed to HIV/AIDS, and it's quite to me, I wanted to make it quite a powerful moment that you just don't see that coming, and then it's there, and then you start to get some kind of feel why Sybil's not just this pantomime character that's kind of all arch eyebrows and drinking champagne. There's a reason she's like this, and that's part of it. And again, you see a lot more of that in the second book. There was a lot more of it in the first one. That scene went on for a lot longer, but I decided to kind of cut it back and introduce it a little bit more slowly. As you get to by the time it comes to the final book, I know exactly how it ends. I knew roughly how it was going to end, and then I came up with the final scene in my head a couple of months ago, and I'm hoping that I'm going to make people cry with it. I'm not saying it's a sad ending. I'm just saying that I think it's going to be quite a moving ending to the whole saga. So.
Okay, it's good to know. Now,
looking forward to it.
Yeah, A Crime and Disorder. So that was recently passed on Kickstarter. You hit your goal seemingly just in the nick of time, a couple of weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So now that's hit its mark, and you're releasing in November, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. Yes, it's basically I've sent it to print. The printer just came back with the proof, or he's going to send me a printed proof in the next few days, and then hopefully it will go off to the printers. I can start sending it out to people that back the book. My goal was to try to get it out to people that back the book before Thought Bubble, the convention, because I want to exhibit it at Thought Bubble, and I don't want people that have backed it to feel like they've got it after the people that are at Thought Bubble. So my intention is to, worst case scenario, is to send that out to everybody that's backed it in the UK and Ireland first, just because it's more likely that they might be at Thought Bubble, and then send it out to everybody else in the first few weeks of November, maybe sooner. Then after that, it'll be generally available after the 14th of November to everybody. So,
and for people generally available, where are they able to get a copy?
At the moment, I have a page on Gumroad, which is It's Hey Dorothy. I can send you the link for that. It's not available on there at the moment. I haven't put it up. So it probably will be available. I'd say keep watching my Twitter account, which is I am Chris Fildes, Fildes, and I'll definitely be releasing details of how to get that as soon as it's commonly available.
Okay, perfect. That sounds really good. Now, before we close out, is there any other questions we have?
I have one more, and you don't have to answer. But do we find out, or do we see Dumpster Baby grown up?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I'm not going to say when. There is something. Oh, you probably saw the. I don't know if you've read the first few pages of the new one, and you kind of see. I'm not sure if you worked out from the first one who that is.
We have not.
Not yet.
Oh.
Okay.
A mystery there now.
I thought it was really. Okay.
Not as obvious as you thought.
We'll have to read the last 4 pages of the first book.
We'll have to go back.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's exciting.
And then that will help with the new book as well a little bit, but that is going in a big direction for 20,000 Wigs Under the Sea. That's a major plot point of that book. So
Awesome.
all I'm
Okay.
saying.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a strange one, but you'll see. So
All right. Well, Chris, I just want to thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
thank you very much.
Yeah, we've had a blast reading the book. I hope everybody out there does as well. In my opinion, it deserves a spot on anyone's bookshelf.
Oh, thank you. Oh, wow, that's a fantastic
We're
endorsement.
all big
That's really
fans.
nice.
We were nervous
Yeah.
to talk to you today.
Oh my God. Because you know what? Because it's my first book, and I look back at it now, and I'm kind of, I can see all the things that I'd do differently. So it's kind of, to me, I'm kind of like that. That means a lot if people are reading it and they're you know, they're enjoying it. That really does mean a lot because it is my first book. So yeah,
Well, it's an international success.
Thanks very much. Appreciate that.
All right, and that is our show. Remember, you can help support our own show by signing up for our Patreon, www.patreon.com/notarobotpodcast for just $1 a month, and you can get your name shouted out on a podcast of your choice, access to all of our material, and more. As always, there's only one way we say goodbye around here. Be good to each other.
Love yourself.
And don't be a robot.
Just having a